Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Buying a New Build Property in the Netherlands webinar. Thank you very, very much for taking out some time in your most likely very busy days to learn something not only about the Dutch housing market, but in specific about the new build property market in the Netherlands. My name is Ludo Karelse. Well, you see my picture here, and hopefully everyone can see my face on the screen as well. I'm an expat buying manager at Expat Housing Network. I am from the Netherlands, but I've lived in the USA for a couple of years together with my parents as an expat child back in the day. I'm a proud father, not yet of two cats, or sorry, not yet of two kids, but I'm a proud father of two cats. And if they well, if you guys are a bit lucky, they might jump in front of the screen. They are quite curious beings. I live in a new build property myself in Amsterdam. I used to live in a very old property in the city center of Amsterdam, was built in around the 1800s. I've lived in a property in the east of Amsterdam as well. That was a building from the 1980s, but now live in a new build in the north of Amsterdam, actually. And to be honest, very, very happy to be in a new build property, especially now with the utility payments being rather high in a new build property. And that is one of the many benefits that you have as a new build owner, is that those costs are relatively low. Well, I'm not here by myself. We're joined here by our fantastic partner from Viisi, Mr. Aziz. Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Ludo. Great to be here. So my name is Andrew. I work for Viisi Expat Mortgages. We're quite a large team that will help you to finance your dream home. I was personally born and raised in Amsterdam, and then actually bought a property 2 years ago in a city a bit north from Amsterdam. Egyptian roots, as you might see here. It was quite a hectic period when I bought my property. I actually got married on a Monday, got the keys to my property on a Wednesday, and then flew on to my honeymoon. But well, very happy there, and also happy to well, hopefully help you to finance your Dutch living dream, as we call it.
Definitely. Fun fact, Andrew's actually helping me secure my current mortgage. I bought a new place last week. And well, Andrew is my trusted partner to arrange all the financing. So yeah, he's not here just because we found him somewhere. He's the best.
I was also wondering whether you were going to share that, Ludo, but
Oh
indeed,
yeah, well, of course, definitely.
all right, perfect.
Cool. All right, guys. So what are we going to talk about today? A few things. Obviously, first an introduction about Expat Housing Network, and then Andrew will share about Viisi as well later on. The pros and cons of a new build property compared to an existing build. We'll share some market information with you guys, then the price and cost you can expect when buying a new build, and then also a little comparison with the difference between a new build and a existing build, also in regards to costs. The buying process, it's a little bit different than buying an existing build, so good to get an overview of what you can expect there. We'll dive into some details, for example, the 5% rule and the different kinds of guarantees that you'll get, where to find listings, and then again, Andrew is going to explain about all the financial topics and mortgage information when it comes to buying a new build property. At the end, we'll have some room for Q&A. If you guys do have questions during the webinar, feel free to pop it in the Q&A of the webinar itself. There's a section where you can fill in all your questions. My colleague Rick has joined the webinar today so that during the webinar he can answer all the questions that you guys have live. And then if there are any unanswered questions at the end, or questions where Rick thinks maybe it's good to discuss this with everyone here in the call, we'll discuss them live at the end of the webinar. Cool. So introduction. Well, you saw my face. I introduced myself, but we're not doing it by ourselves here at EHN, or I'm not doing it by myself. We have Kimo. He's from the Netherlands. He speaks Dutch and English. He has Caribbean roots, and he actually just moved to Spain to fulfill his expat dream as well. So pretty exciting. Giovanna is from Brazil, speaks English, Portuguese, Spanish, and is now fluent in Dutch as well. She's primarily focused on the south of the Netherlands. So if you're buying around Eindhoven, then Giovanna is definitely your agent. And we have Rick. Rick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, there it is. Good morning. I'm Rick. I'm also a buying agent at Expat Housing Network. I live in Rotterdam. We also have quite some interesting new build projects going on. So if you're interested in the Rotterdam area, but also uh, cities around like The Hague, I'll be your point of contact. And as Ludo mentioned, I'm in this webinar today to answer your questions live. So feel free to put them in the Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So definitely an all-around team here. If it's going to be the south or the north of the Netherlands, we're here to help you out. All right. Some pros and cons when it comes to buying a new build. Well, let's start with the pros. There's definitely a bunch of pros. First of all, you're able to design the property most likely together with the developer or with the selling agent all the way to your own taste. Of course, there will be some constrictions when it comes to certain walls that have to be placed, etc. But I mean, you can design the majority of the layout yourself, let alone the kitchen, the floors, the doors, the bathroom, that kind of stuff. So you can definitely make it into your dream home. 9 out of 10 times, well, I would say 9.9% out of 10, the energy label is going to be very, very good. Not even energy label A, but energy label A plus or energy label A plus plus. Which has benefits to your mortgage application as well. Typically, banks are willing to give a small discount on your mortgage or interest rate when having a very good energy label. Plus, it's just going to translate directly into lower utility payments every month. Maintenance will be limited as well. Just like when you're buying a new car, a new bike, with a house, it's the same. Everything should be working and up and running, meaning that maintenance for the first couple of years is going to be quite limited. And well, we'll dive into this later, but you have certain guarantees like warranties after a new build has been transferred to you, meaning that big things like a roof or window frames and that kind of stuff will fall under the warranty of the developer and the builder. There's no transfer tax. As you guys might have heard, when buying an existing built property, you have to pay 2% of the purchase price as transfer tax, which can be quite a substantial amount. If you're buying at 500,000, that's an immediate huge cost that you have to pay to the tax authorities, and you're not getting anything back for that. When buying a new build, there's no transfer tax, there's VAT, but the VAT of 21% is already included in the purchase price. So there's no additional cost that needs to be paid out of pocket like a transfer tax. There's no appraisal as well. The bank is going to assume that the purchase price of the property is immediately also the market value. So that's going to save you another roughly 800 euros that you don't have to spend as like the closing fees or the purchase costs. Now, don't be scared, but there are some cons to buying a new build, but they're pretty obvious things. First of all, for example, it's not possible to view the property, right? When you're buying a new build, you're pretty much buying out of a brochure. It's not like you can go to a property and have a viewing because the property doesn't exist yet. So it's a little bit more based on the how much you trust the brochure and the selling agent. Of course, there are a lot of things mentioned in the purchase agreement that will make sure that everything is as you expect it to be. But at the same time, you can always expect that the actual property might differ just slightly from the project that you bought or from the brochure that you bought. A lot of times you'll need to have a subscription to be able to buy. What do we mean with a subscription is that you need to have subscribed to a certain project website where you are sharing your interest and saying, okay, I am interested in purchasing this property. And then it's up to the developer and the selling agent to invite you to potentially purchase the property. But this is something that, of course, we as a buying agent will assist you with. Now, when buying a new build, the actual building of the property or the start of the building of the property happens when you have already signed the purchase agreement and already have signed the transfer deed. And the transfer deed is the deed where you get ownership of the property, but only once you become an owner of the property is when the developer starts laying the first bricks or starts working on the foundation. You can imagine that from there on, it will still take around 1 to 2 years before you actually get the keys, before the delivery happens. Now, why is this a big con? I mean, for some people it's nice, then they buy it now, and then after 2 years they only have to arrange the move. But one big con from this part is that you also start paying your mortgage payments from the moment that you become an owner. So you can imagine if you're renting currently, you still have to pay your rent for the next 2 years, but you also have to start paying your mortgage payments for those 2 years. Now, those mortgage payments are pro rata in the sense that if 10% of the building has been built, you also only pay 10% of your mortgage payments. But at one point, the closer we get to the final stage of the delivery, you're paying, let's say, 90% of your mortgage payments plus 100% of your rent. And those costs need to be covered from own pocket as well. So definitely good to keep in mind that those two savings need to be up to a certain level to be able to cover all of these costs, or your salary, which is whatever works best. Now, there's less negotiation possible on the price. I would say this is a pro and a con, because on one side, what you see is what you get, right? The property or the listing price on Funda is exactly what you're going to be paying, plus, you know, additional things like a kitchen on top or a better finishing, that kind of stuff. But in principle, the price that you see on Funda is the price that you're going to be paying for the property. Whereas if you're buying an existing build, it is possible maybe to negotiate on the price and get a lower price, but in the current overheated market, 9 out of 10 times you will be overbidding, whereas on a new build, overbidding is not a thing. Something that I just mentioned as well, but yeah, you'll have double cost with existing housing. So your rent plus the mortgage payments being made while not living in your new purchase property yet. Cool. Well, some market information. Some numbers from last quarter. So currently there are roughly around 8,200 new build projects for sale, and this was around 6% less than last year's or the same period last year. And it's expected actually that this will go down even a little bit further due to a lot of new measures, for example, in regards to the nitrogen rules, but also building materials rising, or the cost for building materials are rising. That kind of stuff is making it less and less attractive for a developer or a new build project builder to realize a project. So interesting to see how that's further going to develop. Average house price is just under 500,000. Well, in line with the existing builds, this has been increasing over time. And again, with the expectancy that the amount of properties available will decrease a little bit, we can expect that the average purchase price for a new build is going to increase again as well. But as you can see, it's roughly 8% higher than the same period last year. It takes, and this is a little bit longer than existing builds as well, but roughly 30 days to from the moment the property or the building or the project really is listed to the moment that a purchase agreement is signed. And there's a small difference between apartments and houses there. Now these numbers are a little bit outdated, but they will or the CBS is coming with new numbers finally. It always takes a little bit of time before they have gathered all the numbers. But what you can see is that at the end of 2022, existing build properties, their prices decreased a little bit, while popularity of the new builds got bigger, and therefore the prices of new build properties increased as well. So when it comes to the stability of the two markets, I would say that the existing build and the new build market, the increasing trend of new builds is something that we see on happening, whereas with with existing builds, it has been fluctuating a little bit over the last couple of months. And again, with all the things happening in the world, a new build property has become a little bit more of a safe bet. Yeah, cool. All right, then a question I get asked a lot, Ludo, what has caused the prices to increase? Well, there are a couple of things. First of all, a few fiscal benefits. One of them is the interest rebate. Now, what is that? At the end of the year, when you're doing your annual income taxes, you can actually ask back roughly and correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, you're definitely specialized in this, but between like 37 to 40% of the interest that you've paid over a year, you can ask back during your annual income taxes, which pretty much makes the loan cheaper and makes the money that you're borrowing cheaper as well. So makes it more interesting to purchase a property compared to just spending rent on a property. There's no capital gains in the Netherlands. So that means that if after a couple of years you sell your property with a nice profit, fantastic, that entire profit is going to go into your pocket or into a new purchase, but you don't have to pay any capital gains on that. So again, makes it interesting to purchase something. Now, the interest rates have been very, very low, especially, last year, years before that, hovering, between 1.5% to 2.5%. Well, this has increased to, on average, let's say 4 to 4.5%. But still, it's historically on a low percentage, especially if you compare to countries around the Netherlands or even, further around like the US or in Asia, these interest rates are much, much higher. So it is, because of that, still interesting to borrow money because the money is going to be relatively cheap. Now, the importance of energy label has increased significantly over the last 2-3 years, also with COVID happening and with everything that's happening in Russia and Ukraine. Having a energy sufficient property or just having a property that doesn't necessarily use a lot of gas is going to be important. And the banks see this as well. So like I mentioned before, you'll be able to get a discount on your interest rate if your energy label is between B to A++. So very, very interesting for sure. Now, on the other side of the balance, other side of the scale, let's say, the rents are very high currently, and they're expected to keep on rising as well. And this is just money down the drain, right? So you're pretty much paying off the mortgage of your landlord at that point, and you're not going to see anything back from that money. So the higher the rents, the more attractive it's going to be for a party to purchase a property. And at the end of the day, it all comes down, I think it's mentioned here as well, at the lack of supply. The more people looking for a property compared to the amount of properties available. Simple economics example, when the demand is higher than the offer, the prices of are going to increase. And that's what we've been seeing over the last couple of years, and we don't expect that to change too much in the coming years as well. Well, something I said as well before is that the cost of materials have been increasing as well, making it the margin and the return on investment for property builders or project builders less attractive. So this again has resulted directly in an increase of prices of the properties to make sure that they can still get their return that they need. All right, then some price and costs that you can expect when buying a new build property. So when buying an existing build, and I'm sure you've all seen it, when you look on Funda, you see a price and behind it, it says KK. KK, it stands for kosten koper. Translated to English means buying costs. And what it typically means is that all the costs that are part of the buying process are typically for the buyer. Now, when buying a new build property, you don't see KK, but you see VON, which means vrij op naam, or in other words, free by name, which means it's an all-in price. So the notary fee for the transfer deed is included, registration in the land registry is included. There's no transfer tax, there's VAT, but that VAT is also already included in the purchase price. The only thing that you do have to pay for is the mortgage deed and the potential extra costs and finishing that you want to include. Now that's an important thing, and that's also important that you double check that with the selling agent or with the developer or with your buying agent, depending on how you're going to approach the process. Sometimes these properties are delivered without a kitchen, without a bathroom, without a floor, without anything. It really differs per project. We sometimes even have projects that are delivered without a heating system, so that there's no central heating. So if you open up the faucet, only cold water is going to come out, or you can only take a cold shower. yeah, it might be your thing, but in the winter it's still pretty nice to be able to take a warm shower. So it's important to double check these kinds of things. And that typically, if it mentioned not to be included in the purchase price or in the current state of the project, then you can expect those things to be added on top. So if you have a budget of 500K and you see a new build project and that's exactly 500K, you'll be able to secure the property for 500K, but it might mean that you're securing a property without a bathroom, without a kitchen, and that kind of stuff. So good to double check, because that would be, you know, a little bit of a hassle. So you can expect there to be roughly another 20 to 30,000 euros on top for the finishing and extra works of the property. Now, this is how it looks like with a existing build. Or no, that's not true, actually. This is just more of a good overview of what you can expect with when buying a new build. So typically there's transfer tax, that would be 2%, but when buying a new build, it's 0% as there is no transfer tax. There's VAT, but that's going to be included in the purchase price. There's registration in the land registry, again, also included in the purchase price. If you want to get a mortgage, which 9 out of 10 times you'll want to get a mortgage, you also need to get a mortgage deed. This is a document where the bank pretty much receives their first right of mortgage and the first right to get their money back if the property needs to be sold. Well, and then a bunch of other things mentioned in that mortgage deed, but it's like the contract you have with the bank. To draft up that document, the notary typically charges between 700 to 1,300 euros, but because it's mortgage related, it is tax deductible. Now, the transfer deed, also something that the notary drafts up, but again, this is included in the purchase price. To get some assistance from a consultant from the bank or either from a mortgage broker is always advisable. Even myself, who do this on a daily basis, securing properties, I also choose to get a mortgage advisor to make sure I get the best interest rates, but also just to have all the advice I can get when it comes to securing the right mortgage. Mortgage advisor bank typically charge between 1,500 euros to, well, let's say 3,000. Typical real estate agent charges around 1 to 2% of the purchase price. We'll share our prices, so EHM's prices and Viisi's prices later on in the presentation. Now the costs from Andrew from Viisi, they're going to be tax deductible. Unfortunately, my costs not yet, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed that in the future this will change. An appraiser, it's not necessary, but if you do want it for your own peace of mind, then you can do so, typically between 800 to 1,000 euros. Technical inspection. Oh, there we go. So technical inspector, not something that is obligated, but we do advise you to do or to get a technical inspector. And they can come in on 2 moments when buying a new build property. Now, especially the first one is something that I can recommend. When we apply for information about the new build project, we'll get a bunch of documents, and one of the documents is the technical description. Now, this is a document that pretty much describes the whole property, but then from a technical perspective. So it will say there's a electrical outlet 1 meter from the door in the second bathroom or second bedroom. There is going to be this specific kind of insulation material in the walls. There's going to be this kind of central heating there, and la 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 la. So completely explained from a technical perspective how the property is going to look like and how it's going to work. This can be quite an overwhelming amount of information. Obviously, we as a buying agent will go through it, but it can be nice to have a technical expert look into this to make sure that everything is up to your expectations. Now, this can take, between 1 to 2 hours, and the technical inspector charges around 50 euros per hour for this. So it's always advisable to have this. Now, you can also ask the technical inspector to come in after the delivery or after the moment that you get the keys of the property to do a final technical inspection, and that will typically cost around 299 euros. Now, when going to the notary to sign the transfer deed and the mortgage deed, by law, if you do not speak sufficient Dutch, you'll need to have a sworn-in interpreter present during that appointment. I'm not allowed to do it for you. A colleague, a friend, a family member is not allowed to do it for you. Really, someone that is sworn in by Dutch court is the only one allowed to translate the appointment. Even though the notary will most likely speak perfect English, by law, they're not allowed to do it in another language than Dutch or Frisian, fun fact, but mostly in Dutch, obviously. That will typically be around 290 euros. Now, a bank guarantee. Bank guarantee is if you is applicable if you decide to not make a deposit from own savings. You can ask the bank to make a deposit on your behalf, because when buying a property, you are always obligated to make a deposit of 10%. Now, it's a deposit, not a down payment. For example, in the US, for a mortgage or to be able to make an attractive offer, you're going to have a specific kind of down payment. In the Netherlands, that's not the case. Just to give a buyer an incentive to fulfill their legal obligations, they need to make a deposit or bank guarantee to the equivalent of 10% of the purchase price. If you don't have the money in savings, totally fine. The bank can do it on your behalf, but then they charge you 250 euros, or if the purchase price is lower than 250,000, then it's around 1% of the guaranteed amount. Making use of the NHG is something that we always advise you to do if you're able to do so, let's say. So if your purchase price is, or the value of the property is 405,000 euros or less, then you can ask the National Mortgage Guarantee to give you an additional insurance. You can see it like that, where they say, if you are unable to pay back your mortgage in a case that you are obligated to sell your property, then the National Mortgage Guarantee, they will take the difference between the purchase price and the rest amount of your loan. Now, this is obviously very nice for a bank because they get extra security, so to say, and to give you some extra in return. They say, okay, because you have an extra insurance, we'll give you a little bit of a lower interest rate. And especially that part is the part that is most attractive. It still mentions 0.6% here, but it has increased since this year to 0.7% of the mortgage amount. But again, it is tax deductible. Cool. All right, then payment terms. Payment terms works a little bit different when buying a new build compared to buying an existing build, because you'll typically pay, or the payment is divided into two parts, two ways of paying. First of all, when going to the notary and signing the transfer deed, that is when the purchase price and the purchase costs are applicable. So what is the difference? Purchase price, the purchase price of the land, plus the costs of like the notary, my costs, the VAT, all of that kind of stuff. That is will be due when you sign the transfer deeds. Now you have a second part of the project that needs to be paid as well, and that is the building and the property itself. Now it is mentioned exactly in the purchase contract what the terms are going to look like. I mentioned before, you pay pro rata, meaning that if 10% of the property is finished, you pay 10% of your final mortgage payments. If 50% is finished, 50% of your mortgage payments, etc., etc. Now again, these terms will be defined in the contract, so you know beforehand, and your mortgage advisor and the bank will know when they can expect to make these kinds of payments. But it will be mentioned in the contract how that's going to be divided. All right, then just an overview of what the process is going to look like in general. So first of all, we'll need to find a suitable project, right? We'll need to search, go through Funda, go through the websites of the projects and developers, and see if there's anything that meets our requirements. Well, if that's the case, then at that point we schedule a meeting with the selling agent and or the developer. During this meeting, we'll hear everything we need to know about the project, about when it's going to be finished, if it's a co-developing project, or if the developer is going to define everything, how the association is going to look like, if they're going to want to make the building sustainable, and in what sense. But you're also going to hear what is still possible in regards to the property, in layout, etc., etc. Now, from there on, we'll receive a bunch of documents, like 20 to 30 documents, with all these information, with all the permits also, etc., etc. We as a buying agent will go through it, make sure you understand everything and are aware of what you're getting yourself into. This is also a moment to potentially get a technical expert in to review the technical description and make sure that that part is also up to our expectations. Now, it might be that out of these documents, we get a bunch of questions. So we have a second meeting with the developer or with the selling agent. The nice thing is, by the way, when buying a new build, there's typically a little bit more time to go through all of these things, do our due diligence, have another meeting, even a third meeting to go through everything. It doesn't go as quick as buying a existing build. Well, from there on, if everything is okay, clear, and up to our expectations, and we're still enthusiastic, or you as a buyer are still enthusiastic about the purchase, thereon we sign two documents. We sign a purchase agreement and a building contract. Purchase agreement saying, okay, I agree with everything that has been presented to me, and building contract is giving order to the builder to build everything if all of the certain terms are met. Now, we'll touch base on that during the hooray letter, but there are a few things that need to be met before the actual first brick can be laid. When signing the purchase agreement, that is also the moment that you apply for a mortgage. So that typically takes around, let's say, 4 to 6 weeks to arrange everything and have your financing in order. Now at one point you get your mortgage approval letter, fantastic. Then not a lot can go wrong anymore. The only thing that we do want to wait for is the hooray letter. Now the hooray letter, it's a little bit of a weird name, but that's how they call it in Dutch. But you should see it as like a official declaration that all the requirements have been met to start with the building and to give everyone ownership of their property. So a few things are, for example, that 70% of the project needs to be needs to be sold. So a project typically consists of a bunch of apartments or a whole neighborhood of townhouses, for example. 70% of that project needs to be sold before they're allowed to actually start building. But also having the permit from the municipality. In Amsterdam, having the ground lease being given out as well. Couple of things that need to be met before the builder can actually start building. Now, once we get the hooray letter, that is a good indication, or that's the official indication that they can start giving everyone their ownership and starting with the building. Then we go to the notary. There we sign the transfer deed and the mortgage deeds. Again, that's official moment when you get ownership of the property. Well, property hasn't been built yet, but you will be owner of the apartment right, or at least of the cadastral property, so to say. Then all the money from your bank goes into a building depot, and from the building depot, the mortgage payments are paid based on the terms that were defined in the contract. Now, the building works typically from there on takes, let's say, a year and a half to get everything ready. Now, before the delivery, we can have the technical expert or the technical inspector come in to do a final technical inspection. Then we have the delivery, you get the keys of the property, and well, from there on, you can move in, depending on, of course, if you still need a kitchen, a bathroom, that kind of stuff. But technically speaking, once you get the keys of the home, you can move in and make it your own. Now, after then, you still have a guarantee period or like a warranty period when certain institutions, if either the project developer or extra insurance companies, will take care of certain guarantees and warranties defined in those contracts as well. I'll show you right here how that's going to work. First, we have the 5% rule, and then I'll touch base on the guarantee. So what is the 5% rule? 5% rule is a legal right of the buyer, something they can always make use of. You should see it like this. It's like a deposit or bank guarantee you do with the notary. So you have your mortgage payments. As I mentioned before, it's defined in the contract when you pay what percentage. You start with 5%, you end with 100%. But at one point, around 95% of the building has been done. Now, at that point, some developers or some builders can get a little bit lazy with the finals of the work, because pretty much everything is done. The last 5% is always cosmetic and like the final paint touch works, putting the dots on the i's, let's say. So to give the builder and the contractors and the developers an incentive to finish everything up to the agreements, we can say, okay, the the last 5% of the mortgage payments that we need to make, we're going to put in the like building depot of the notary as a deposit. And only at the moment that everything has been totally finished, we will give out the last 5%. So 5% to the last 5% obviously goes to the builder, but then the last 5% you leave it to the notary to make sure that they have an incentive to finish all those works. You can also do it with a bank guarantee. The 5% for apartments is also for the common areas, like the hallways. If there's a communal gym, if there's a communal rooftop, if there are elevators, that kind of stuff, it's also applicable for that. It's only applicable if there are defects after delivery. And we always say don't free the amount equal to the defects. Why is that? Is because if you only free up, let's say 1%, then there's also a reason for them to think, well, screw that 1%. I already have the rest of the money in. I don't really mind anymore, while 5% is already a substantial amount. Plus the interest rate of the non-payments is relatively high on that one as well. Then the guarantee, how that works. Well, you always have a contractual guarantee. That's just always mentioned in every purchase agreement, and it's always the same. After 3 months, you still have that 5% rule. And after 6 months, you have for standard maintenance, where the contractor has to come in and if for example, all of a sudden the bathtub is leaking or the shower has issues, then they can come in, or they are actually obligated to come in and fix that stuff. Now, after 5 years, they still are applicable for hidden defects, things that should have been known to the buyer but were never mentioned. And then all the way up to 20 years, major defects, things like foundation issues, roof issues, facades that are falling apart, things that are pretty major. Now, it's also possible, and a lot of building or new build developers have this, I would say almost all of them, they choose to get some extra coverage, and they make use of a insurance from Woningborg, SWK, or from Bouwgarant. These are all institutions that are like insurance companies for developers, pretty much. They will give you some extra coverage. On top of the 3 months after delivery, they will also, or this will actually change to 6 years guarantee. Now, specific parts will be mentioned in the in that specific Woningborg, SWK, or Bouwgarant agreement about the shorter guarantee period, so to say. And there will be a specific part for major defects. So this will be extended for an additional 10 years. So it's quite nice to have that, but something that you can expect nowadays to pretty much always be included in those contracts. All right, well, before we pretty much get started on everything, we need to find a listing, right? We need to find a property and to get enthusiastic about that. And it's quite smart idea to share with you guys where you can find these kinds of listings. Well, a very big one, and there's a new website on its way actually, but it's not finished yet. But a big one is nieuwbouw-nederland.nl, which is like a funda where you can find all the new build projects of the Netherlands. Pretty easy. It's all collected on one website. Now, besides that, a lot of the municipal websites nowadays, like Amsterdam.nl or the website of the Den Haag, Rotterdam, Eindhoven municipalities, they all have a specific sections where you can find what new build projects are going to come online in the coming months. Because when a new build project wants to start, or at least wants to sell their properties, they already have to have the majority of their permits available. Having a permit means going to the municipality and requesting a permit. So the municipality is one of the first parties involved who knows, when a project is going to come online, or even that a project is coming online. So on the city website, you can find a lot of information as well. Now, funny enough, you have certain neighborhoods. For example, in the neighborhood that I'm living in, that whole neighborhood, and that's a neighborhood of around 6-7 separate buildings, is all part of one project. It's a project where they decided to pretty much fix up one whole neighborhood. So at one point, I applied for a property in one of the buildings. I didn't get it because it was a first come first serve, or no, sorry, it was actually a lottery scheme. I didn't get chosen. But because I already subscribed to the whole project, when they started the sale of another building, they reached out to me and said, "Hey, Ludo, we do have this one available. Are you interested in that one as well?" And well, at that point, I obviously was, so I moved forward with that one. But it can be beneficial to actually subscribe and keep an eye on all these project websites, because if one isn't available, they might put you on top of the list for another building. Funda.nl has a lot of new build projects mentioned on there as well. I do have to say, Funda is super good with existing builds and very up to date, but with new builds, a lot of times, the whole project will be listed still on Funda and as available, but then when you dive into the project, none of the actual properties are available anymore. So it is good to be pretty sharp on that one, but they will be mentioned on Funda.nl anyway. And a big one as well is the network of your buying agent. You have specific selling agencies who are focused on new build projects. We have a lot of strong ties with them. So I tend to get a lot of new build listings before the actual project is online already, which I'll be able to share with my clients at that point as well. But yeah, the majority of, or I would say these four sources are going to be the biggest one to find the right listing. All right, Andrew, would you like to share about the financial topics and mortgage information?
Thank you very much, Ludo. Of course, as Ludo already said, there are some differences if you look at existing houses and new construction. Of course, with existing houses, you'll have the purchase cost, and you have to have a valuation report done to actually determine the market value of the property. New construction will save you on the purchase cost mostly, and the market value is actually quite easy to determine by the purchase price plus any additional work that you'd like to do. Maybe to give you a bit of an idea looking at the costs. So let's say we focus on existing construction, you'll have a purchase price of 500K, transfer taxes 2%, you have some notary costs, you have to appraise the property. Well, you have our fee, the Expat Housing Network fee, and if you look at the total, you'd be looking at almost 519,000. You can only borrow the actual market value of the property, which is 500K assumed for this example, meaning that your own capital is that 19K that you can see at the left bottom. If we look on the right-hand side for new builds, there's no transfer tax, as Ludo said, no valuation report. A part of the notary cost will be applicable, so you only sign for the mortgage deed, but not for the property deed. And you can see that will save you quite a bit, because then your own capital that's required is roughly 7,000 euro. So there's quite a big gap that you can see here. Very important one, how is the market value determined for new builds? They normally look, so mortgage providers normally look at what's the actual cost to build the property. So they look at the cost for the ground and for the construction. As you can imagine, there might be also some additional work needed to finish up the property as it is. What you could see sometimes that with new construction project that you don't get a kitchen, for example, delivered standard, or a bathroom or anything like that. So it's very important to be aware of the fact that there will be some extra costs that you can also finance. So you can actually finance that in full if your income is high enough to do so. And normally what happens then is that you have to fill in a home improvement form for you to be able to include that in your financing. Very important to check these kinds of things about the total purchase price. Okay, if I want to have a kitchen added, sometimes they already include a bathroom, but that's quite basic. So if you really want to have it to your liking, it might be that you have to spend a couple of thousands euros more. And in practice, we actually see that clients need another 5 to 10% on top of the actual purchase price for the ground and the construction. So always make sure to have yourself informed about this, about how much of that you can already have included, what is already delivered, let's say from the start. Is there already a kitchen in it? I've seen a lot of clients that had a kitchen in it, which was quite standard, and had to add another 10K to get it to their liking. Which is quite an important amount to be aware of, especially if you don't have a lot of savings lying around. So always make sure to have yourself informed about this. A very important thing, looking at your own financial budget, is that you already start paying for your mortgage as soon as the construction starts. So this is very important. Let's say you sign at the notary the deeds, then normally what happens is that the price for the ground is paid immediately, and then the remaining amount for the construction is actually paid during the construction phase. So what they actually do is they look at the construction phase and then split it in 10 parts, for example, 10 terms. And every time you hit a new term, you're in the next step of your project. So for example, they put in the ground floor, they put in the first floor, they started putting in windows, etc. And every time there's a new term, a new phase in the construction period, your monthly payment starts increasing. So you normally start at a low amount, which is purely paying for your mortgage, paying that for the ground. And then looking at the construction period is going to increase to, well, of course, the 100% as soon as you get the keys to the property. It's very hard to determine what kind of monthly payment you'll have during the construction period. So that we normally give as a rule of thumb, 80% of the monthly payment you'll have during the construction period, meaning that you'll have your own rent or current mortgage to pay and also the new mortgage. So it's important to be aware of that. Other things to keep in mind, if the construction has already started, then it might be that there is construction interest to be paid, which can sometimes also be included in your financing. And a couple of important dates, looking at it from a mortgage perspective, are quite important. When you sign the purchase agreement, you have a legal cooling off period of 1 week. Looking at the financial clause, so the amount of weeks that you need to arrange the mortgage, that's quite large. So you're looking at roughly 2 months. But I think the most important thing are the suspensive conditions. Ludo already explained a bit about that. These are the conditions that need to be met before the construction can actually start. So there needs to be environmental permit, 70% of the properties need to be sold, especially the 70% we see a lot. And why is this important? Because your mortgage offer needs to be valid to bridge those suspensive conditions. So if your suspensive conditions are 6 months, meaning that, the selling party has 6 months to, meet all those conditions and start construction, that actually means that your offer validity of the mortgage needs to be long enough to bridge those 6 or 9 months. If it's not valid, then we have to reapply, possibly with a higher interest rate. So that's not a very nice thing to have. So that's always something that we keep in mind when choosing the mortgage provider, to choose something that has a long offer validity to bridge that gap. So with some mortgage providers, you can also extend the offer, but you might be paying quite significant costs here. That can go up to 0.25% per month. So if you're buying a property for 600K and you need to extend the offer, you're paying 1,500 euros per month for every extension that you need. So quite an important thing to keep in mind when we compare them. Of course, you can always make your own estimation online to see how much you could borrow. We always advise people to schedule a telephonic appointment. It could also be a video call or anything on at our offices, for example, to walk through your situation. I will also be sharing that with all of you, so you can schedule this appointment, so we can make an accurate calculation to see how much you could borrow. And I'm happy to help you, just like I'm going to help Ludo as well with his mortgage.
For sure. Yeah, looking forward to it. All right. So to summarize, thanks, Andrew, by the way, for that valuable information. To summarize a few things, definitely important to check on double costs, extra works, timing. Do this with your buying agent, but definitely also do this with your mortgage advisor. It is important to make sure that you have the cash laying around to cover these kinds of things. Do consider a technical review of the documents. Make sure that you are aware of everything. It can be quite a lot of information, plus a lot of legal Dutch information. So it can't hurt to double check these kinds of documents. Have a look if the builder has an extra guarantee from SKW, Woningborg, or Bouwgarant. Check if there are extra works that need to be done, as you can pretty much add these directly onto the purchase price of the property. And again, consider a technical expert for the delivery. Just double check if that can be of added value for you guys. Then the cost that you can expect from Expat Housing Network, not totally unimportant. Well, we have a specific package for buying a new build property. What we do here is you have access to a buying consultant. We'll have a personal intake, go through your whole situation, and already give some insights on what your situation would look like. We'll offer search, so we'll search a new build project for you. We'll subscribe to those websites and present you with projects that meet your requirements. Now, we'll obviously attend the meetings with the selling agent or with the developer. We'll be there to answer questions you have, but I think more importantly, ask the right questions to the developers or the selling agent to make sure that we know exactly what we're getting ourselves into. Now, all the documents that we'll receive, we'll review it for you. We'll write a summary. We'll make sure that you are aware of everything. Again, check if everything is up to the norms of a new build project. Yeah, this means also going through all the checklists, points of attention, and checking that the developer and the selling agent are doing everything that they should be doing. We'll do a price benchmark to make sure that the price that the selling agent and developer are asking for the property is in line with projects in the neighborhood or with other kinds of comparable properties in the neighborhood. If possible, we'll negotiate about the price. Then we'll review all the legal documents, so the contract, the purchase contract, the building contract, but also the transfer deed and the mortgage deed when we get there. Then we'll be there for the whole pre-transfer support, answer any questions that you might have. Just be your full-on makelaar, your full-on real estate agent in that whole process. If we do want to have some third parties, some experts come in, like a technical expert, we'll book them for you. If we need any communication with the notary, we'll do that for you. If you want an appraisal to come in, we'll do that for you. So we'll be that point of contact for you, so that you don't have to meet up with a bunch of different kinds of people. Now, that whole process, we ask a fixed fee for it, easy as it gets, 3,450. That's including VAT. To get everything started, we ask 499, and then the rest is only due completely at the end when we get you to the notary. Easy does it. Pretty simple. Andrew, would you like to explain your costs?
Yeah, sure. Happy to explain. So our fees start around the 2,500. Depends a bit on where you are in the process or if you already own a property. For expats, we have a starting fee of 2,900 if you're a first-time buyer. Our fee is tax deductible, so you get roughly €1,000 back on that. And we're completely independent, so we can choose out of more than 30 mortgage providers. It's always best to have an expat specialist help you with this, because not all of them help expats, not all of them finance for them, look at how long you've been here in the Netherlands, or don't do that at all. So it's quite important to have a look at that. Our fee is an all-in fee, so that includes applying for any insurances. And the nice thing is that we have an in-house acceptation team. So we have an own department that already checks all the documents before we send it through the mortgage provider. They're called smooth operations for a reason, so that they make sure that everything runs smoothly. And because of that, we also have a lot of priority links with mortgage providers, meaning that we can have mortgages arranged very quickly.
Yeah, perfect. Well, these are all reasons why I decided to move forward with Andrew. Definitely. All right, then the Q&A. I think Rick was already on fire with answering a bunch of questions we received in the Q&A. So thanks very much for that, Rick. I see we do have at least one question open in the Q&A. I think this one is for you, Andrew. Question from Aiden. If we are already paying for the mortgage of our current home, is it possible to transfer it to the new build if we will sell it after the construction of the new home has finished?
Yeah, normally that is possible to take the current mortgage with you to the next property. We do have to see whether that specific mortgage provider that you're with now has a long offerability that can also bridge the suspensive conditions for the new construction project. So in theory, if that is all met, we can do that for you, most certainly.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That was the last question we had open in the Q&A. If you guys do have any questions, please do pop them in now, and otherwise feel free to book a free consultation with either me or Andrew, or with both of us.
I think it was super clear, guys. Great job.
I think so too.
Thank you all for joining.
thank you very much. Well, I wish you guys a wonderful, wonderful day. If you do have any questions, indeed, you know where to find us. You'll receive the recording and the slides most likely tomorrow, and otherwise, like I said, before the end of the week. Thanks very much, Andrew, for joining us and always being our trusted partner when it comes to financing. Thank you very much, Rick, for answering all the questions during the webinar. And then thank you well, to everyone that joined, and hopefully we will speak soon.
Have a nice day.
Have a good one, everyone.
Bye, guys.